Get in the know. Non-stop Vikings talk. It's Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
Purple Daily on Draft every Monday right here on the Purple Daily YouTube channel. We got Miles Gorham, we got Tyler Fornes, Declan Goff here to take you through another edition of Purple Daily on Draft, where we break down basically the NFL draft from a year-round perspective. So on today's episode, with training camp now basically wrapped up, we're going to get into the winners and losers of training camp from a rookie, and we'll also include second-year players into that conversation as well. Got a pretty packed show. We're going to probably touch on, obviously, the Trey Lance situation going to Dallas and the Vikings opting to most likely keep Jaren Hall. We'll get into some college football prospects, which rookies maybe aren't in danger of, which rookies of the Vikings are not in danger of missing the 53-man roster, and some college football prospects. So a lot of things in the chamber. Now, we are recording this on a Monday afternoon, about 26 hours or so from the official cut-down day. The Vikings already announcing a few cuts, so we'll try to keep this, I guess, as evergreen as possible. But there's probably going to be some changes to the Vikings roster between now and next week's episode of Purple Daily on Draft. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start with the winners and losers of training camp from rookies and second-year players. We're going to break it down this way. We're going to have Forno give the winners from Vikings training camp from a rookie and second-year players. So Forno, floor is yours here. Who are the guys that stood out to you, made the most of their opportunity, maybe solidified their spot on the 53? Who are the winners from the rookie and second-year class from the Vikings at training camp?
Well, I think we would be remiss if we didn't initially start talking about Ivan Pace Jr. I had a 4th-round grade on him coming into the NFL draft, and one of the reasons why he was so low for me was I didn't think he could move laterally well at all, and he was a liability in coverage. Plus, it being 5'10", 230, not exactly a guy that you can just stack and shed. He can utilize leverage somewhat, but there's a limit. Once an offensive lineman is actually able to get their hands on you, it's really hard for him to actually shed the block and make a tackle, which is something you need in the running game from your linebackers. And it's a tough find right now with modern day linebackers because you need so much pass coverage. And you're getting a lot of these safety hybrid types like Brian Asamoah, a former safety. DeMarvion Overshown was just drafted by the Dallas Cowboys, unfortunately tore his ACL. He was a former safety. And you're getting like these 220, 230-pound linebackers who are relatively skinny, but they can run, they can cover, and they can eat space up quickly. That's kind of the modern day linebackers. You're not finding these thumpers. And that's why Jordan Hicks is going to be a valuable piece for the Vikings this year. He's an old school thumper. You're not going to want him doing a lot of coverage. You're going to want him manning gaps. You're going to want him stacking and shedding, just doing basic core concepts in the running game to be able to prevent some of those long gains. And that's where guys like Asamoah and Pace can really take advantage, because one of Pace's biggest strengths is rushing the passer, finding gaps, shooting them, and being able to utilize his size to kind of sneak in under offensive linemen to be able to create pressure. That's what he's great at. I don't know if he'll ever be an every down linebacker, but what he does well is so good that he's going to find a role on this team for a long time to come because of all those little things I mentioned. And after that, it's really Ty Chandler. I thought the entire time he was going to be running back too. And the Vikings tried out Kene Nwangwu in minicamp. And I opined like, well, are they actually believing in Nwangwu? Because they haven't shown it in 2 years, 2 different staffs. Or is this them trying to see if they can make something work moving forward? Well, he got hurt, so we'll never really know how much he would have truly progressed throughout camp. But Chandler took the bull by the horns and ran with it and earned that job. His performance against the Seahawks was excellent, and then he followed that up with a good performance against the Titans, and he didn't even have to play against the Cardinals, which shows you how much he improved over that time. And thirdly, it's an odd winner, and I know I'll probably get some hate in the comments for it, but I'm going to give it to Lewis Cine for this reason. It's not necessarily the performance. It's the fact that he's out there getting reps, and he's able to start working on improving the things he needs to, which can only be fixed by reps. So from that aspect, I'm calling him a winner. Outside of that, there's really not a whole lot. Jay Ward flashed against the Cardinals, but he wasn't really around those first 2 preseason games where he was making like really nice plays, but he flashed really big in the 3rd game. So that was nice to see. Obviously my boy Jaren Hall, that showing progress each game. We have no idea what he's going to be moving forward, but you see that kind of growth throughout the 3 preseason games over the course of 2.5 weeks. That's really big as far as being hopeful for what the future can be. And I thought that was really nice, but there wasn't a whole lot noteworthy with this group of young players. And sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes that's a bad thing. It depends how you contextualize it. But I think for blatantly different reasons, Pace Jr., Chandler, and Seen are my big winners of training camp from this young group.
Interesting list there, man. Pace probably being like the crown jewel, for sure, biggest winner here, right? I mean, UDFA, who made the most of his opportunities, probably going to be a starter or play at least significant snaps come week 1 and beyond for the Vikings. Ty Chandler was weird because I feel like in the first maybe week, we could have maybe had him in the loser category. But I think as time progressed, he clearly earned the running back 2 spot. I wouldn't say he won it. He's on a winner by default, but he definitely, I think, turned enough heads and said, no, this guy definitely wins the RB2 job.
By default.
Boom. Perfect way to sum it up. And then Lewis Seen. That's interesting because I wonder if Miles maybe has that in the loser category here. I like your explanation, Forno. But Miles, who are the biggest losers for you in training camp? And I guess just to get it out of the way, was Seen one of them?
I mean, to a degree, yes, I would say he is. But to Forno's point, I think it's hard to put him on the same level as some of the other guys, mainly because of the injuries coming off of and just the reps he needs. It's really hard to expect a guy to come back from an injury like a compound fracture that he had in the middle of the season last year and come back and play with the confidence and play with the like tenacity that you would hope for. But to the same degree, I still think being the 4th, 5th safety on the team isn't a great thing for a first round pick in year 2. But I don't have him. I have him on my list as a loser, but not in like this, probably in more ways of like what Forno is saying, as I think there's some positives to take from it. And I don't want to just only make it all about the negatives for him, because I think there's a lot more. Whereas the guy that I kind of want to take some of the negatives for is Andrew Booth Jr. I think there's more of a negative to say about him because yes, there were injuries for him as well, but that dude's never been healthy. And that's one issue for him. And then the other issue for him is the fact that he just hasn't played well. He hasn't really shown enough to warrant the team to trust him to be even the 4th cornerback on this team right now. He's behind Joejuan Williams. Like, that dude was playing into the second half on Saturday against the Cardinals, and you just saw a lot of inconsistent play. And I don't know if you want to chalk it up to like the scheme change for him last year into this year with Brian Flores, or if you want to just chalk it up to the fact that the health and just not picking up the defense as well as you'd like him to. But the technique and just letting guys that you would hope a 2nd round pick wouldn't let win are beating him. And like guys like Jake Bobo for the Seahawks, guys that are lesser named, UDFAs and those types of things, just kind of beating him one-on-one when you wouldn't expect a player of his talent to kind of let him beat him. So I'm just disappointed in that. And like, we just haven't seen more. And my hope is, I know there's been talk of like him getting cut, him getting traded. I think it's premature to like go that route. I think they should keep him, try to develop him behind the scenes, be your 5th cornerback or what have you, and see if he can build off of some of these snaps that he's been able to have the last couple of preseason games. But yeah, he'd be my first loser. And then to piggyback off that, I think Brian Asamoah is kind of my next one, not because I think he's bad. It's more so because of the injury allowed a guy like Ivan Pace to kind of usurp him and take some of his snaps away. Now, I think Pace was going to earn those reps, but I think those reps could have been earned over a guy like Troy Dye or over a guy like I'm drawing a blank on the starter. Jordan Hicks, excuse me. Like a guy over Jordan Hicks, whereas he's taking those reps with Jordan Hicks instead of over Jordan Hicks. And I know he's a similar style of a player to Brian Asamoah, so I get why like those two guys who play the same type of position, and maybe they'll play together on sub packages and 2nd and longs and 3rd and longs in obvious passing situations. But I just thought Asamoah's injuries and just kind of coming off slow in camp just didn't help him. And it just allowed a UDFA like Ivan Pace to kind of take over some of the reps that you would have hoped Asamoah would have just secured as this is our every down linebacker. Yeah. And then Pace maybe will come in other situations where it feels like Pace is going to come in maybe for Asamoah at times. So that's mainly more why as a loser. And we didn't get to see enough of him during camp. And I think that's just, as a year 2 guy, that's just unfortunate. And then my last one, I kind of had 2 guys here, but I think Asezi Otomo, the D end, he kind of had like a positionless offseason. Like they mixed him in a little bit at edge. He's playing D end. He's kind of a like tweener, but he seems to be getting usurped by guys like Ross Blacklock and Jonathan Bullard, who both didn't play on Saturday. And so, well, Blacklock did, but Bullard didn't. And so my issue is a little bit there is a guy in year 2 you'd hope would maybe take jobs from those veterans that are on minimum deals. And I just don't think he's done that. And so it wouldn't surprise me at this point if he's a guy that gets cut and then you put him on the practice squad and maybe he continues to develop there, but I just don't think he's done enough during training camp and during preseason to kind of like secure a job where you'd hope a guy in a 5th round pick in year 2 would maybe take that over. And we just haven't seen that from him.
It's all really interesting players here, Miles, because Andrew Booth was a 2nd round pick. And in general, that draft class is just looking really weird for the Vikings. And I know we still should let the season play out for accurately judging it. But between him and Sean kind of being basically the first 2 picks in the Kwesi era and them tracking probably not to be impact players even in year 2, not a great sign. Brian Asamoah is weird because he's still obviously going to probably play a lot in week 1. But you're right that I think everyone, when they first hired Flores, that was maybe the first one everyone kind of thought, outside of like Daniil and Harrison Smith, of course, that was an exciting one that Flores can really sink his teeth into. And instead, I don't think it was Brian Asamoah playing poorly in training camp. It was probably more of Ivan Pace living up, taking an opportunity and running with it to the point where he just might be a better player and better fit for Flores, where Asamoah still mixes in. And then Assezi, I mean, they need someone on the defensive line, somewhere to basically step up, and that's a big, I think, position of weakness for them right now. Both trenches, basically, defensive and offensive line. But Forno, what do you think of those lists? Booth, Asamoah, and Ezzy kind of being the loser bin for training camp for the Vikings this year.
I don't really have any issue with it. I would have considered putting Jaquel and Roy on the list for one reason. Guy didn't play the first 2 preseason games, and with his trajectory downfall when it came to draft stock is he was actually projected by Bleacher Report to be the Vikings' 1st round pick last summer. And he obviously fell to the 5th round. A lot of that had to do with LSU turmoil, bringing in Brian Kelly. And there's that video of him basically standing behind a prospect going like this and just looking like he is actually just an old white dude, which he is an old white dude, but it just made himself look even more so like one. And there was a lot of turmoil coming from that program, the Kayshon Boutte stuff, where there was rumors of him doing all kinds of things, which I won't say on the air, but if you know, you know. And I just wanted to see him play more. He was obviously getting some reps with the ones this past week during practice, but he needs reps. He needs the ability to get on the field. And I thought that aspect kind of made him a loser for me. And Asamoah, that he needs to play. That
was it for me too. Yep.
Yeah. If he doesn't play, his biggest issue is misreading gaps. So if he needs to hit the A gap on the right side, but then he instead, I'm going to hit the B gap on the left. So because I think that's where the run is going, that's what turns a 5-yard gain into a 30-yard gain. And those are the reasons why he wasn't playing a lot last year, because he just wasn't consistent in that area. That comes with time. You can't learn to that and drill that with Madden. You can do a little bit of that with film, but you need to be able to see that in a live game situation. That's just something it's very difficult to simulate. So I really would have liked to see him actually get extended run in the preseason for that reason. And he didn't. And that could really show up big in the first few weeks of the Viking season. And one of the reasons why you've seen speculation, including from Doogie, that there's potential that Pace could end up being that starting linebacker, which I don't think should be the case. But he needs time to just figure out the little nuances, because if he picks the right gap and he points and shoots, he makes really big plays. And that can be a massive benefit to the Vikings, create 3rd and longs and make things a lot easier for the defense. But he needs to be able to get out there and play. And it was really disappointing he wasn't able to.
You know what's funny?
Go ahead, Miles. Yep.
I was just to say, what's funny to me is the first 2 picks in the 2023 draft would be considered winners. And then the first 2 picks in the 2022 draft, I mean, I know like Cena's in a different situation, but like they're kind of losers in that aspect. So it's kind of a reverse role there. But I think besides those 2, most of the young guys are kind of losers in a lot of ways. Not like losers, but I think there's just not a lot of guys that have stepped up the way you'd like them to. Like Jalen Naylor missed all of camp essentially. Andre Carter was a huge like UDFA signing, got like one of the most UDFA like guaranteed money in like the history of the NFL. McBride was a disappointment. So it was just a lot of young guys. We didn't see enough of them step up like I think we would have liked them to.
So that's what I was about to ask about Andre Carter, who got $300,000 base contract, a $40,000 signing bonus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Tom Pelissero noted it was one of the biggest commitments ever to a UDFA. Is this someone, Tyler, you see going on the practice squad most likely? Does he not make the 53 then?
I really don't know. It depends on what the Vikings intel is on if they can actually sneak him onto the practice squad. Because when you watched him, he was exactly what you thought he'd be. When he bends around the edge and gets a really nice speed rush, excellent. He can pursue really, really well. He's not strong enough to be able to hold the point of attack. And then once he does actually engage, well, he doesn't have a lot as far as a pass rush repertoire. That's fixable. Like, I can teach you how to use your hands. I can teach you a rip move. I can teach you a swim, a club. I can teach you all those little things. I can't teach you strength. You got to be able to put that on yourself. He looked significantly bigger when I saw him in training camp than when I watched his Army film. That's a net positive, but the core strength still isn't there to an NFL degree. And it may not be for one or two more years, just because when you talk about the military training versus NFL training, they're counterintuitive to each other. And that's one of the things that makes a transition from the military academies to the NFL extremely difficult. So when I take a look at what his prospects are, it's do the Vikings think they can sneak him out of the practice squad. Last year, they kept Luigi Villain, and his preseason was very inconsistent. I wouldn't be shocked if they tried to make a trade for a guy like DJ Wanham, because I think he's completely replaceable, and you might be able to get a 4th or 5th round pick for him. And that could be a benefit and that's how you end up keeping an Andre Carter. So when you're playing all this roster math, there's a lot to go into it, but Carter was exactly what I thought he was. Great bending, is not strong enough to be rosterable, but that still may get him picked up by another team.
Let's take a look too at this 2023 Vikings roster and maybe see who doesn't make the 53. One guy that wasn't on the loser list, at least from Miles, DeWayne McBride, who was someone we hyped up a lot when the Vikings drafted him. Great college career, had an opportunity to maybe be RB2, but probably, I think of all the 6 guys, Jordan Addison, Mekhi Blackman, Jay Ward, Jaquelin Roy, Jaren Hall, DeWayne McBride's probably the one, and maybe Jaquelin Roy, that doesn't make the 53. Miles, do you think DeWayne McBride's more of a practice squad guy?
Yeah, I think he's a practice squad guy at this stage. The way they've talked to veteran running backs and considering those guys like a Mike Davis or even a Kareem Hunt, I don't think McBride's ready. He doesn't look explosive. I think there's obviously some solid runs, and we saw it on Saturday from him. He looked better in the third game than he did the first two, but I just don't think he's ready for you to trust him to be your 3rd or 4th running back. He's just not. Like, they need a guy that can step in if Chandler or Madison get hurt, and McBride just isn't ready for that. So I think he's an easy practice squad candidate for me.
Yeah, it was really too bad because I thought he was going to be potentially a backup running back here with it being basically an open competition behind Alexander Madison. Do you think, Forno, that DeWayne McBride will stay on the practice squad and he won't get snatched up by another team? Do you think he's able to kind of stay here and get some reps, or is he someone that could actually be pounced if the Vikings put him on the practice squad?
I don't think you let him off the roster. And it's not necessarily saying that he's earned a spot on the roster based on his performance so far during training camp in the preseason. But there's a lot of potential there. And teams saw that UAB tape where he was the number 1 rusher in all of college football with over 7 yards a carry. He runs like a car wreck. And some of the issues that he had were poor blocking. And he needed to be able to show a little bit more wiggle with breaking tackles and being able to see and hit the hole. But a lot of the issues that he was experiencing in the running game were not his fault. And I think that really manifested itself a lot in the Arizona game, where he was getting holes opened up for him and being able to hit them. I think if you put him with the first team offense, he'd be okay. And I think that's something where that can really make an impact on what we think of a lot of these young players. And I really don't think with his talent, you can sneak him onto the practice squad. Yeah, there's very few players who get claimed every single year, but McBride only fell because of uncertainty with what his measurables were. And I think he put enough on that in that Cardinals game to show, he's going to be just fine. And there's really something to develop with him. I don't think they can afford to let him go just the same way they kept Ty Chandler last year.
Taking a look at the quarterback side. So Jaren Hall finally gets a start, plays really well, honestly, I thought, in maybe you can call a very meaningless preseason game, but still meaningful for a lot of different players. He gets the start, leads a couple touchdown drives. Miles, what did you like from Jaren Hall from that preseason game? And a two-pronged question, too. Should they have made the trade for Trey Lance, or did they do the right thing, not forfeiting a third day 3 pick and just keeping Jaren Hall?
Well, to start, I think Jaren Hall played really well. I think the first half is the area I wanted to focus on the most because that's when most of the second, third team guys, NFL type players, are going to be on the field. Whereas that second half, there's more the third string guys that are literally trying to just stay in the NFL and practice squads and maybe XFL, UFL type tryouts, CFL type tryouts. So I thought he looked really good in the first half. And what I was excited about was they didn't overcomplicate it for him. They did a lot of boots. They did a lot of those things for him to make easier reads and decisions. And I think as he develops and gets those reps, that's just really important for a young guy, is to just kind of get his feet wet by giving him some easier opportunities. And I thought I loved it was the one throw to Blake Prohl. I think he stepped up in the pocket, found him coming across over on an over route and hit him right near the sideline. And I thought it was like it reminded me of Teddy Bridgewater a little bit. I'm not saying he's going to become Teddy Bridgewater, but I think, I love that. I love the anticipation, the throw, and the awareness to like hit that, fit it in the really small window that there was there. And I just thought he had really good command. It's really tough for a young guy to come in and kind of own a huddle. And I thought he did a good job getting people lined up. Didn't really seem to have too many like pre-snap issues. And I think that in itself is really important for a young quarterback to be able to get in and out of a huddle. So I thought he played well, especially after the first preseason game. I thought we've seen consistent progress as you would like to see from a 5th round quarterback, rookie quarterback. And so I was excited just to see that. So I think that in itself probably earned him a role on the 53 and to be that third quarterback and develop behind the scenes. So I'm excited about that. And then to answer your second question, I wanted Trey Lance back in the spring. I think it made sense before the draft. If you're going to send a day 3 pick, because then you have all offseason and all camp to work with Trey Lance, but you already drafted Jaren Hall to be that kind of like third string backup development type quarterback. Now I know Trey's younger, but he's more expensive, and there's just a little bit more. I don't want to say. I don't want to call it like he's got like a package to him, but I just think baggage. I don't think there's more baggage to Trey Lance, but I think there's more expectation. And so I think with Jaren Hall, you'd have a really good job of developing him. Whereas Lance, you would have brought him in really late, and you just didn't have enough time to like work with him to make a clear decision on him. Whereas you've had all offseason with Jaren Hall and using that pick, it just didn't make sense to do that unless Trey Lance was ready to be a backup. And at that case, I don't think he's ready to be your backup quarterback heading into week 1.
All right, Forno, you're the biggest Jaren Hall fan I know, but you also were tweeting out over the weekend and week leading up to the Trey Lance trade that it was just a big fumble by San Francisco, rightfully so, 3 first-round picks, and they boot him off basically 18 months later. Was there any type of room to have Trey Lance and Jaren Hall on the roster together, or did you just like the fact that it didn't mortgage a day 3 pick to get Trey Lance? I guess, how did you see that situation playing out from your end of things?
My perspective is I still think Trey Lance can be a really good starting quarterback in the league. He got screwed, royally screwed. The Niners look, hey, we got destroyed by Josh Allen. Kyle's like, oh, I need my own type of Josh Allen, a guy who can just take things to a different level in my offense. So he gets Trey Lance, understands that Trey Lance needs time. Not only does he need time, he needs to play. He needs reps. That's the one thing he needs more than anything. And he doesn't get it. And part of it is on him because he got unfortunately injured. And part of it was on Kyle Shanahan's hubris. You can't look me square in the eye and tell me Brock Purdy is a really good NFL quarterback. He's not. He is the product of Kyle Shanahan's offense. And if Kyle Shanahan's offense can get that out of Brock Purdy, why can it not get that out of Trey Lance? All he did was make things easy for Brock Purdy. Hey, this guy's going to be open at this point in space. Hit him and let him take over. Like that Deebo Samuel crosser for a touchdown in the wild card game for 75 yards. That wasn't Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy hit a 5-yard hitch route to Brandon Ayuk in one of the preseason games. 41 yards. They have the talent to be able to do that. And to say, hey, I'm going to roll with Brock Purdy, who didn't have a strong arm and is coming off Tommy John surgery, who was the last pick in the draft for a reason, because he's not a good quarterback, and completely give up on your number 3 overall pick when he's still a massive question mark because he needs time to play, is something that's going to get Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch fired. I really believe that. Now, do I think that Trey Lance is going to for sure hit? No, nobody knows. And that's why I thought it would have been worth a day 3 pick. Even if you have Jaren Hall, you bring both of them in, guess what? Now you have 2 potential legit options to take over a starting quarterback in 2024. Because right now you have just Jaren Hall, who's a even bigger wild card than Trey Lance. He was a 5th round pick. But the more chances you have to find that guy, the better off you are. Hell, the Dallas Cowboys, 1989 draft, 1st overall, they draft Troy Aikman. Supplemental draft a few months later, they spend their 1990 1st round pick to get Steve Walsh out of Miami. They let them battle it out in training camp. Guess what? Aikman won. They flipped Steve Walsh for 1st, 2nd, and 3rd round picks to the New Orleans Saints. And that really helped spike that rebuild and help them make a dynasty in the early 90s. The more opportunities you have to find that guy, the more options there are, the better off you are at actually finding him. And I would have loved to have gotten him. $940,000 this year, $5.3 million next year, $5.3 million, whatever. And then you could probably find someone to take Nick Mullins and that $4 million contract. It would have been a smart idea to bring him in the building and see what you have. But if they didn't, they obviously looked back at what they saw last year in those joint practices and probably didn't see enough to where they wanted to make that call. So from that perspective, I get it. From my perspective, with what he had, with what his potential is and how we have so many variables that we have not figured out yet to see if he can actually reach that potential, I think it could have been a mistake to not make the move. But either way, I think we're going to be fine. I trust Kevin O'Connell to find that guy. And who knows, it may be Jaren Hall. But I would have liked to have bring Trey Lance in because the more shots you have, the better.
Absolutely. It's the hardest position to develop. You got Kevin O'Connell here too, that's which is better system for developing a quarterback. I'm glad they ended up keeping the pick, excuse me, and just letting Jaren Hall develop. If you want to find another quarterback in the future, next year's draft, which might be a topic on this show a lot moving forward beyond 2023, go for it. But I think it was the right call to just kind of pass, let Jaren Hall develop, see what you got there. Fellas, before we get into some college football prospects to watch, any other Vikings roster takes that you guys have that you wanted to unleash here before we get to the college football stuff?
Vidarian Lowe getting traded? I mean, I thought that was interesting, just in the simple fact that, you know, as a second-year player who looked like he was developing pretty well as like a backup left tackle. I know he played primarily right tackle last year. I know he's the 3rd string. But he seemed to be moving back over to the left side this year. Looked pretty good in the preseason. But the Vikings recouped their sixth round pick that they used to draft him last year. So I just thought that was interesting. Out of all the guys that they were going to move, it was the young guy, whereas he still had, you know, including this year, 3 years of team control, whereas Udo and Brandel are on expiring deals. So I was a little surprised by that, but maybe they just didn't think Lowe fit and they wanted to give him an opportunity to find a chance to go to New England where he might have a better opportunity to see the field than he does in Minnesota. But I just thought that was an interesting move by Kwesi and team to move on from a 6th round pick, a second year player that was a 6th round pick.
To kind of pair with that, Chris Reed restructured his contract again. Yep. It's now down to basically the veteran minimum, but it's now fully guaranteed. We're coming into the year, he had a $2.4 million salary. None of it was guaranteed. They shrunk it to 1.4, but guaranteed 600,000. Now it's a vet minimum, but he gets all of it. And that tells me he's going to make the team and he's going to be on the initial 53, but will he stay on NFI and then miss 4 to 6 weeks after that because he hasn't done anything at all during training camp? Or is it going to be one of those situations where they just wanted Blake Brandel to get cross-trained at guard, so they worked him there all preseason, and then he's just going to go right back out to being that swing tackle? And that now you have somebody who can play more multiple spots. And I think that's probably the most intriguing thing for me. They brought in a lot of tackles to see if they could find somebody to stay on the roster, but all of them were bad, as most tackles that you find off of the street are at the NFL level. So I think that's probably the most intriguing thing for me. Disappointed Tay Gowan was waived. I was holding out hope he may be able to get one of those last roster spots because I really liked him and I thought at times he played really well. But I think his spot is going to Najee Thompson.
All right, boys, let's get into some college football prospects. This is Forno's Christmas. By the way, this is presented by our friends at Bennington and Power Lodge. Okay, you can get up to Ramsey, you can get up to Brainerd, Mille Lacs, Minnesota. All these locations in Minnesota have a ton of Power Lodge, a ton of great Miller boats and plenty of fun toys basically at your disposal. You can go up to the Bain one in St. Cloud, where I went to college, and get one of these great Bennington pontoons. A lot of great toys basically at Power Lodge. Go to powerlodge.com to find the nearest location for youth. Shout out to them for sponsoring Purple Daily related programming. Forno, this is your Christmas, man. This is this weekend now. It started. Obviously, I saw the butt kicking Notre Dame put on Navy in Ireland over the weekend, but now everyone's basically going to be taking the gridiron this weekend on the college ranks. Locally here, the Gophers obviously host Nebraska, and I heard the bank's going to be sold out. But college football prospects, what are some guys that you're looking forward to watching this weekend?
Oh, boy. Let me tell you, this slate is not great if you're a casual college football fan. There's not a lot of great matchups. The best one is probably on ABC, North Carolina traveling to South Carolina. We'll kind of start there. Drake May versus Spencer Rattler. Two quarterbacks with a lot of talent. I think Drake May is QB1 at this exact moment. Now, Caleb Williams still has an opportunity to overseed him, but May is so much better at just playing technically sound, being able to work through progressions in the pocket. And Caleb Williams, phenomenal, but he doesn't play within structure, in my opinion, well enough to overseat May, but I have it very, very close. Williams is just absolutely absurd, but he tries to make SportsCenter's top 10 every single play and doesn't just take the easy stuff. And to me, I want at the NFL level, I want somebody who's going to be more willing to take that easy stuff, those 10-yard in routes, those hitches. I want that because that's going to translate a little bit more than just doing the crazy stuff. Because hell, Johnny Manziel did the crazy stuff and he did it really well, but the basic stuff still wins you football games. That's why Patrick Mahomes is so good, because it's not just the crazy stuff. The crazy stuff is incredible, but he hits those easy intermediate routes. And that's why the Chiefs are so good, because he's just able to play the position of quarterback, not the position of playmaker, so incredibly well. And I think Williams just needs to take a step as a traditional quarterback, and then he's going to be QB1. But May has that already, and he already has a flair for the dramatic. It's not nearly to the level of Caleb Williams, but I'm a big Drake May guy. Rattler obviously has that cannon, 5-star kid. A lot of people remember him from that Netflix show where he just came off like a pretentious jackass. Well, he's fine now, and he learned from that experience. And you talk to anybody in that South Carolina program, that because Shane Beamer was his offensive coordinator initially at Oklahoma, they talk about how much he's matured and he's grown as an adult. And I think that's important to note. He's not the same person. And he really came on at the end of last year, balled out against Tennessee, top 5 team, balled out against Clemson, top 10 team, won both of those games, and then played well against the top 15 Notre Dame team in the Gator Bowl. So how is Spencer Rattler going to be this year? Is he going to be able to finally put it all together? Is Drake May going to be able to continue? Because Phil Longo's not there anymore. And Phil Longo is an offensive genius when it comes to college football. A lot of variables in that matchup. Jaden Daniels versus Jordan Travis on Sunday. That's going to be fun. Jordan Travis is getting a lot of hype out of Florida State. I think we need to calm down just a little bit. I don't think he's nearly that level of an NFL prospect, but he is exciting to watch play football. And everything out of LSU's Jaden Daniels has really taken a big step this offseason. But he's always been a liability as a passer. Great on it with his legs, but very inconsistent throwing the football. How is that going to manifest itself this year? Has he really taken that step? And that's going to be a fun game to watch out of Orlando. 3 more guys. If you've probably never heard of him, but wide receiver Torrey Horton, Colorado State, transferred from Nevada. And he is a really good wide receiver and a college fantasy football dynamo. But he's going to face his best competition in Washington State in week 1. If he can really perform well against a good Power 5 team with a Jake Dickert run defense, that is something that can really manifest his draft stock and put him on the radar of people in the national media. And I'm excited to kind of see how that plays out. Plus Cam Ward's in that game, and Cam Ward is basically Kyler Murray if Kyler Murray was sized like a real adult, because Ward is like 6'2", 205. Two more. Quinn Ewers out of Texas. Very inconsistent last year. They called him Mullet Mahomes coming out of college or high school. He had a perfect 1 rating in the 24/7 Sports Composite, meaning he was the number 1 prospect across all of the recruiting services. But he was inconsistent last year. Everybody points to the Alabama game where he balled out, but then he got hurt right away at the beginning of the second quarter. Labrum injury on his non-throwing shoulder. Same injury Baker Mayfield had in 2021 where he really struggled. And I think that manifested a lot of those struggles last season. How is he going to be able to do this season? Can he take a step with Arch Manning breathing down his neck for that job? The goal is to have Ewers start this year, play really well, go to the NFL, and then Arch takes over in 2024. But if Ewers struggles, how is Arch Manning going to take over? Something to watch. Last guy, I don't like him at all. And I don't think he's going to be a good NFL prospect, but a lot of people do. And his name is Joe Milton out of Tennessee. And they face Virginia week 1. Milton, 6'5", 260, he's built like a Mack truck. The Dante Culpepper comparisons are interesting because of the body frame. Milton's not nearly the athlete that Dante Culpepper was, but he has a bigger arm than Josh Allen, and he can throw it like 90 yards. Like, some of the throws he makes are just absurd. But he won the starting job in Michigan, got benched. He won the starting job at Tennessee over Hendon Hooker, got benched in 3 games. He has been massively inconsistent his entire career. He's now 24 years old and playing in the most friendly offense in all of college football. How is he going to be able to stay consistent? Can he stay consistent? Can he hit the layups and not just layer it over the top of everybody, which is what he did against Clemson in the Orange Bowl? I want to see if he can actually be a quarterback or if he's a driving range guy. And what I mean is he can hit that deep ball. He can throw a beautiful pass, but can he do all the intricacies within the course of an offense? Because this is going to have him only use half field reads. It's basically going to be, I'm going to look at this safety and it's going to tell me to go to one side. And then I just have to wait for the slant to come open on the slant flat. That's basically what the offense tells you to do. It's very, very simplistic, very simple for a quarterback to run, and it makes their stats just go through the roof, which is one of the reasons why Hendon Hooker was so hyped last year, even though the hype was completely unwarranted, in my opinion. Milton has the potential to be that next guy, but there's so many red flags.
Look at that. I mean, if you want your
I am the game, JR.
If you want your college football prospect nerds right there, that you just got a boatload from Forno, so be on the lookout for those. Miles, anyone from your end, from a college football standpoint or team or player, you're really looking forward to watching this weekend or even this season as a whole?
Well, I thought Forno would love Joe Milton, by the way. Like, that's just like his typical, like, big physical, big arm, Carson Strong type quarterback. I know he's more athletic than that, but
Carson Strong is accurate though. Joe Milton,
sure.
It's like watching a 9-year-old kid try to hit targets at the local carnival. It's all over the place.
I am excited to see him play though this year because it is kind of a defining moment for him because there is a lot of hype for him going into the season. So he was definitely one of the guys on my list. But like the Florida State LSU game, I'm not sure how how Florida State's going to be this year. But I do like. I kind of wish we'd in that game. There's Jared Verse, their defensive lineman, edge rusher. I know he's a good player that I've started to look into. Heading into week 1. I wish Mason Smith from LSU was going to get to play. He tore his ACL in week 1 last year in this very game. They were trying to move the game back just so they could get him back, but he's not going to be able to make it back. He's their interior rusher. So he's another guy that I was hoping to see, but I hope as the year progresses,
he got suspended.
Did he end up getting suspended? Did I miss that?
For taking an impermissible benefit.
I missed that. So I missed that. Okay. In this day and age, in literally, how do you do that in the way that the NIL is now, dude? Like, come on. I missed that. So thanks for that update. But he was someone I'm still curious to watch because I think there's potential there. And then Jordan Travis, the quarterback there as well. I just think he's got some potential to maybe become something. And then Jaden Daniels, the LSU quarterback transfer, he hasn't shown a lot, but hey, maybe there's something there with the dual threat ability that he's got that LSU can help unlock that I don't think Arizona State was able to.
Love it, boys. That is a meat and potatoes episode of Purple Daily on Draft. You got first and second year players, winners and losers. You have Jaren Hall, Trey Lance conversation, college football prospects. All of this stuff is what you can expect right here on Purple Daily on Draft every Monday on the Purple Daily YouTube channel. Next week is Labor Day, so maybe a little programming note. We might have an episode maybe on the next day, Tuesday. We'll discuss that and get that at you, though, sometime next week. Purple Daily on Draft every Monday here on the Purple Daily YouTube channel, where we just want to see the Vikings win a Super Bowl before we die.